Hello, everyone. It is.
Oh, what day is it, Nicholas?
Excuse me. I was expecting Chris to be joining me, but apparently he's been kidnapped by the newest member of Retribution.
What?
So,
Well, it's Gotham City, Birds and Ashes, then you can have your podcast host back.
all right. So, I'm here today, I guess, with Bane.
Oh! Remember what a cultural touchstone I am? And so timely, too! Remember Bane, everybody?
I'm pretty sure that when the last time we were able to actually meet up at MagFest, we were doing Bane impressions for each other. So,
And now we do it on the
It's been a long
podcast. It's been in all Halloween costumes, and he hasn't appeared on the podcast, so it's Bane.
so
Carry on, Nick. What day is it?
it's October the 14th of 2020.
Yes.
I got distracted by something very distracting, so I forgot to say the date. It's the middle of October, which, of course, is Halloween month here on Weekly Manga Recap, which is when we take Halloween recommendations and people in various costumes appear in place of my co-host Chris because they like torturing me.
But they carry all of the same
so-
opinions.
Yes, it's amazing how...
Understand that the opinions of Bane do share the opinions of normal podcast host Chris.
It's amazing how the Spookmaster General and Thor and Bane and Chris all have the exact same input that the others would have.
We have very similar tastes. We all believe that One Piece is the best. We are talking about One Piece today, correct?
I mean, we can talk about it, if you want to, I guess.
Oh, huzzah!
I mean, there's no chapter to talk about, but...
There's always something to talk about with One Piece. How about those?
Yeah.
How about those giants? It's pretty crazy.
Same sports opinions, too.
Yeah, those are not doing too well. Now I must have a drink. Got it. Carry on, please don't hold up.
Okay. So, Chris was warning me.
Takes a moment to get the
straw
straw out.
Chris failed to warn me about who exactly would be appearing on the podcast in place of him, so I don't know how much of School Mermaid you, Bane, have read before.
Enough to know it's bad.
Okay.
Like Bane. Or as I would say in the Christopher Nolan movie, muy mal, because I'm Spanish. Except I'm not.
No, I was played by Tom Hardy. So School Mermaid was a series that we are talking about this week.
What if I try going in from below? That works a little better.
Okay. I'm glad that you're only just now learning how to drink through that mask that you've had to wear your entire life.
No one knew who I was until I put on the mask. Carry on.
Okay. The series by Yoshitomi Akihito, which ran in a couple of different magazines. Champion Red was one, Weekly Shonen Champion was the other. Has a kind of an odd publication history because it was originally published as a quote-unquote 3-chapter one-shot, and then it got revived, and then it got revived again. It essentially sounds as if the mangaka basically kind of put it to the side after, and came up with an idea and thought they were done with it after the one go, and then maybe there was positive feedback, or maybe you just came back to it and was like, oh, I've got some more ideas that I can run with this premise. And so we kind of wind up with a series that is one part an anthology of short stories, all with rotating around this same premise. And then eventually there is a somewhat longer ongoing story that happens, again, with the same premise. And some stuff ends up getting retroactively fitted into this plot so that it is like a continuous timeline of things feeding into each other instead of just a bunch of single parts. And the premise of School Mermaid is that there is this school where mermaids are. Who could have thought? But instead of being like regular mermaids, for some reason, they appear as girls who are wearing classic style Japanese school swimsuits, the one-piece blue ones that have like, a label on the middle of them. And the legend says that if you go to the school and you recite this chant in order to summon them, the mermaids, which are normally invisible to everyone, will become visible to you. And starting from there, you have until the sun rises to try and eat the flesh of the mermaid. If you fail to do so, you will turn into a mermaid yourself and join their ranks. But if you are successful in eating the flesh of one, you will be protected from that. And also, you will be able to make any boy that you want fall in love with you. The conditions are that if, depending on what their name is, you have to eat flesh of a mermaid whose name starts with the same letter as them. And the way that this happens is that girls who have failed to do it and have joined the mermaids, their letter is the first letter of their first name. And there's some other rules that get thrown in and expanded upon. By the end, it gets a little bit weirdly complicated and a little bit kind of clunky and hard to follow. But it's a pretty dumb story just from the get-go. It's just, girls being assholes because they want to make a guy that they have a crush on their love slave. That is like what we're starting off with. And it takes about 3 volumes to introduce a girl who is not a selfish asshole. And fortunately, the story revolves around her as it goes forward, because it's like she actually wants to, do good things with this. But for the most part, it's got that kind of like, sort of, I don't even want to say Twilight Zone ish kind of feel to it, of like ironic punishments that have a slightly better person than this wouldn't have happened to you, kind of thing. And it's just one story after another like that until you get into the ongoing story. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of karma. There's a lot of like, hey, you were shitty, but hey, sometimes there's a crazy twist. And I think the only one that's kind of interesting to me is the first one, because the rules for this series, as you said, are kind of complicated. It's kind of like a very bad, dumb horror Death Note, where like this little fucking notebook just keeps expanding with a bunch of rules where they're just like, oh, you shouldn't fucking be out after dark, though. That makes them angry, or, whatever fucking rule it gets added in to add to the story or whatever. The first one kind of works, because although the premise is absurdly dumb, the concept of one girl being betrayed by another one solely because she's like, oh, once you turn into a mermaid, that'll make it easier for me to catch you next time and get to the boy I like, because I need somebody with your letter name. Basically, the other ones are too fast and you're always so slow. Like, that one had like a decent story to it, but everything else is just kind of like a worse version of that as you go along. And then you're just like, yeah, I don't think this is like the Twilight Zone, where this premise is strong enough to sustain an entire like universe around, basically. Like,
well, and I should clarify, the Twilight Zone very rarely had part 2s to stories.
But it's just like, there's not that interesting of a concept here. You kill the mermaid. Like, there's a couple rules that you can twist around. You can do different things with. There's one that's like somewhat novel, that the two girls are killing each other, and one's like, the only way I'm going to survive is if I eat this flesh and think of the girl who's trying to kill me, so that she'll become my love slave. And they basically, like, there's stuff like that, but it's just like, it's just not that interesting. Like, you're just like, I don't know, this is here. Like, you're doing the best with this concept, but if you were to tell me, like, hey, we're going to do an ongoing horror manga series, what's the premise? Like, I don't know, you hunt down high school girls in swimsuits and cut them up and eat part of their flesh. Like, it's like, this isn't interesting enough to really go the whole 9 yards with it.
Yeah, and when it does get to a point where it's the premise for an ongoing story, a lot of stuff has to be retconned. So you mentioned the girl who, in the first story, her real plan is to actually kill the girl that she came in with, so that she can then later kill someone else and get that and get that boy to fall in love with her. Blah blah blah. She ends up becoming like the final villain of the series, basically, because stuff like gets kind of like retroactively added in that like she's actually the teacher in a future storyline who tries to get something to happen, and then she's discovered a way that by getting one of the mermaids who has escaped the curse of the mermaid, but not really, if she drinks their blood, then it gives her eternal youth and beauty. And the reason that she was actually looking for a girl whose name started with one thing was not because that shared the name with the boy that she wanted to be with. It was actually because if that a mermaid drinks the blood of someone whose name has the letter after theirs, then that actually, and the reason why the original mermaid has a Q, which is not like a name that happens in Japanese, is because there was this girl who was from a family who they were called Queen, and so Q instead of K, and so
It sounds
it
insanely
gets
dumb.
like it's one of those things that like it started off as a very simple but weird idea, and then it was designed to be for a few chapters. And I will give Yoshitomi Sensei a little bit of credit, which is that they managed to take that and come back to it and put a few different spins on it each time that they came back to it. But some of the spins are much weaker than others, and it's definitely something that was never designed to have a huge, grand, intricate story behind it. So I say that, like, hey, there's this one girl that is actually likable that you follow for a while. Her name is Shinobu, and she has no interest in wanting to actually use this mermaid curse. She just like goes one night to actually help out her friend. Her friend gets turned into a mermaid, so then she's like, is there some way that I can go back and save her? And as she's getting more involved in it, she keeps on making these visits, trying to figure out what the mystery behind everything is, so that she can do something about it. Because she realizes after doing a little bit of looking into it, oh, all these mermaids are just girls who have been, captured by this legend over the course of years and years. These are, although they are basically monsters now, they were once humans, and they can be potentially turned back into humans, and so aren't they worth saving? And so it's like, okay, that's like a hero that I can like want to actually follow and root for, as opposed to, oh, she's gonna score a date with the guy that she'll like for 2 months before getting tired of him, while he is doomed to hopelessly remain in love with her because of this stupid curse that she's placed on him. But when you actually find out more and more about this stuff, it's like, oh, this is not actually interesting
No.
as you get into it. So there's a story that at times is actually it's mostly dumb. There are occasional bits where it's like, okay, that's interesting, or that's a nice little twist that you threw in there. There were actually one or two moments where I was like, oh shit, because I was surprised, but it was a surprise in a way that actually made perfect sense. But then there are just like dumb things that the girls do. Like, there's this thing that comes up multiple times of, well, I could trick the other mermaids if I dressed myself like them. So I'll put on this school swimsuit and pretend to be one of them. And that ends up getting one girl killed because, one of the other girls that's in the building thinks that she's a mermaid. But then the girl that she's getting killed, it turns out that she's getting the mermaids to attack her when they're normally just running away. And it's like, well, why did that happen? And so she becomes a mermaid. And so in the middle of this thing that the girls are doing, one of them becomes a mermaid. So one of them is able to eat this girl who just became a mermaid, her flesh. And so it's... I think that the best stories are those that are just like the most straightforward ghost story with a twist kind of thing that happen. And like you said, the first one I think is the cleanest of those.
Yeah.
Because it's just, here's this weird premise, here's this one rule, and playing off of that one rule, this girl betrays this other girl. And that's what happens. And everything after that is a little bit more complicated and loses a bit of the charm of that. So, hey, it's not the worst series that we've read for Halloween, but it's one of the weird and dumb ones. So,
yeah, I'm not as favorable. I really didn't like this series. I think there's like some stuff to. I think it's dumb in a very bad way for me, where I'm just like, I don't know. And again, the irony of us doing a Halloween month with neither of us particularly like horror probably plays a little bit into it, but I was like, I don't know. I feel like even if I liked horror, this isn't very good horror. It's not particularly scary so much. And the art's really kind of bad. And there's a part of it too where I'm just like, I don't know. Why is it like high school girls in swimsuits constantly doing like model
bending
poses
over
and stuff like that? I'm just like, this is just kind of seems dumb.
Why was this series actually popular? I wonder.
Yeah, I was like, the first 3 chapters make for like a fun midnight ghost story kind of thing, and then everything after that is pretty skippable as far as I'm concerned.
Also, there are a few different sources that I had to look up information on this series because it's not a particularly, mainstream one. But like, there are so many. They're like, "Oh, this story is so creepy and weird." And it's just like, I mean, it's not really. I mean, there was not a single moment when I was reading this where I was just like, "Oh, this is disturbing," or "Oh, this is scary." It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, there's maybe the closest is when the girls in the bathroom for me and the other girls start coming out of the waterworks, and it looks as though like their lungs are coming out. Like they don't come out in like a full thing. It looks like it just splatters every part of them and then they reassemble. I'm like, that's kind of unnerving, but the art's not really there to, drive it home, so to speak. So
yeah, if it played up more of that kind of stuff, it would have definitely been a scarier thing. Because I had the same kind of reaction as you when I was like, oh, that's actually kind of weird and gross. Because most of the time it's just, these mermaids...
Come chase me! Like...
Pretty much, and they only speak in like grunts and squeeze, and of course they look just like normal high school girls most of the time who are wearing swimsuits, and they're like swimming through walls and floors and stuff like that. So when they appear out of the waterworks like that, it's like the only time that it happens.
Yeah.
So it's not great, but I do want to say it's like I've read much worse, so I'll give it that. So, but yeah, that one's done.
All right, let's talk about heroes and villains, Nicholas.
Okay, we'll do that. Yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
Mr. Bay.
So, if you don't die of the My Hero Academia, you live.
That was the second movie, and this one, it's like, that looks like a bad manga. Like, you look like you could read it, and I'm like, no, bad for you. It doesn't work completely. Because I was like a feeling, we're using a noun and like an activity. But yeah, just those ones. Remember all the notable quotes from the third movie in the trilogy?
The speech that he gives at the Wall Street Exchange is a bit too complicated.
Remember when he says that little boy has a beautiful singing voice? That
Yes.
one. Oh, what a lovely, lovely voice. Remember when I told you to mind your surroundings? Oh, it was the first one. Oh, dear.
Well, I mean, he made a cameo in mine.
He was in there. Remember what he said? Please?
Yeah, he said, pay me.
Well, we don't, these quotes are so memorable, we don't even have to go over any of them.
All right. Chapter number 287 of My Hero Academia, Mistake. I don't really actually want to talk about this thing that happens very much because I don't like it a whole lot. It's basically All for One and Nana Shimura.
Wait, but Nick, don't you mean another Batman? Come on, everybody, Bane!
Anyway.
Nick, I'm back. What happened?
Where have you been? Alright, so I don't really want to talk about this chapter very much, Chris, now that you're here.
Yeah, okay.
It's basically just Shimura and All for One and All for One's brother and Shigaraki all shouting at each other about how much they hate each other, while Shigaraki and All for One kind of struggle for control, and then also Shigaraki is struggling for control with Nashimura and his brother for One for All, and the first recipient of One for All is like, we are never going to let go of it to you. We're going to remain with this boy. And Shigaraki goes, "Nyeh," and All for One starts mocking them and is like, we're going to steal them. Come on, brother. You claim you've chosen this. No plain bluffing. When I know the truth, I've seen it through Tamura's eyes. His incredible power has been wasted on one who could protect neither friend nor teacher. They were forced to defend him. What's more, he's given himself over to blind rage. So conferring this power to someone so worthless was a mistake. And his brother's like, no way. Because he says, Deku rages for the sake of others. For them, he does his best until he can do no more. He is possessed by a drive to save others. Our power is his, and we shall follow him. And Deku goes, "Mom!" And then there's a blast, and in the real world, Deku and Shigaraki get separated. And so the struggle has ended. Shigaraki and All for One were not able to take One for All. They're both flying backwards away from each other through the air. They're both really beating the fuck up. And they're both basically trying to stay conscious and keep going because they have things that they want to do. That whole thing's over. We cut over to Gigantomachia is back, and Dabi's says, all right, well, Shigaraki's fighting Endeavor, so, all right, nice, let's prep. And Mimic's like, what are you talking about? And Dabi's like, we're going to tear down this fake hero society, of course. And he looks really happy about this. And he has this sound effect that is beam. So he's like, we're going to kill everyone. Yeah!
Twinkle!
It's the happiest he's ever looked. So Mr. Compress looks over at Toga and is like, hey, are you all right with this? Because I know that you're looking for those UA scamps you love because they're heroes. Are you okay with us killing them? And Toga kind of starts thinking aloud. And she says, where do they draw the line? If heroes are supposed to save people, then was Jean not considered a person? Will they kill me too? That's what I want to ask Izuku no Chako. Depending on their answer, I'll be fine. And the last page of the chapter is this split between Toga on the top and Uraraka on the bottom, as it seems that they're heading for a clash because, of course, Uraraku's group is the only group of people left who could conceivably stop Gigantomachia and company.
Yep.
So this last part of the chapter is way more interesting to me than the rest.
So you're much more of a My Hero fan than I am. Is like the ongoing storyline of All for One and One for All and the parentage of Shigaraki, like, is all that like really fascinating stuff to the general My Hero fan base?
I have no idea. I don't tend to participate in too many like fan reaction discussions and stuff like that. I can tell you that I am considerably more interested in the thing just between Shigaraki and Nanashimura, which seemed to kind of get brushed aside a bit. Like there's a couple panels dedicated to it in this exchange where Shigaraki's like, "Hey, by the way, I hate you too, just like my dad did," and that's just kind of it.
Mm.
And then there's all this stuff between All for One and his brother, and it's like, I mean, I don't know that guy. I don't know All for One's brother.
Yeah.
What's his name? Like, I don't know who he is. So, and then there's this whole wresting for control thing over, and it's just like, I mean, I still barely know who Nana Shimura is. I know that she's got a lot of fans because, she's this, cool looking female hero. But we've only seen really like glimpses of the type of person that she was in the past. We haven't really gotten to know her very well before this moment. So to see this big exchange that she's having with her fated rival doesn't really have a lot of an impact with me. And then, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, because that's where I'm at, where I'm like, I wasn't super invested throughout all this. I'm like, maybe it's just because I'm not crazy invested in My Hero either. Like, I enjoy it, but generally, like, the deeper lore of it kind of bores me if it's not presented the right way. I don't know, something about like the metaphysical battle for the soul, like whatever fucking Kingdom Hearts headspace this is supposed to be taking, this battle's taking place in. It's just, I don't know. It's not bad. I'm not like, oh, this is awful, but I'm just like, yeah, it's just not gonna hit me the way that this is supposed to. Like this big 2-page spread of Deku flying forward, even though half of his body is missing. It just doesn't have the emotional impact I'm sure I'm supposed to have.
And also, there's just this whole like, there's doing the struggle over One for All, and it's just a bunch of characters holding their hands out while waves around them, and it's like, you know what? If they had Kamehamehas coming out of their hands, then
if there was a giant energy blast in the middle, and it was like, we have to keep pouring energy into this.
It's amazing how much like a few things outlining a white beam can make a difference for.
Really can. It's going to be hell, right? To like when they animate this, it's definitely going to give old school anime fans like Dragon Ball flashbacks, right? Where you're like, holy shit, when does this fight against Shigaraki end? This shit's still going.
Yes. Got a little bit distorted there,
so
hopefully I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. I was just saying, it's gonna feel like one of those old school Dragon Ball fights when this gets animated, where you're just like, holy shit, like they fucking went into a headspace, they're still fucking doing this fight. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had that moment. Watch. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just had that moment thinking about it, watching the Dragon Ball Z when they were fighting Boo, and I was like, finally, all right, well, Gogeta will put an end to this. This storyline's gonna end now. I mean, like, what the fuck? It's still like 30 episodes later, being like, we're still fighting Boo.
Oh my god, yeah, I never really considered that after they kind of like pop. When you think about it, yeah, they
there's
pop
like
into his head, and
there's like 6 false finishes in the Boo fight. Like Gohan gets a false finish. Trunks or whatever they call that. Gotenks has a false finish. There's, I don't know. There's like Gogeta has a false finish. Like, there's so fucking many.
Boo does the self-destruct thing at one point.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, there's not really actually a break from when they go into Boo and rip out the Boo pod thing, so he turns into Kid Boo. like he flies around the universe and stuff, but it's not like they go off anywhere to do something else. They're just immediately like, let's go back and fight him again. So it might as well just be the same fight that's happening. So. Anyway, yeah, most of this chapter was just very uninteresting to me. But the idea of, oh, okay, we're going to, reference this, this weird character relationship that's going on with Toga and Uraraka. Toga's a more interesting character as a villain to follow than All for One is. So the fact that it's like, hey, lesser used characters are headed for a clash. That's something that's like, all right, well, at least that'll be something different for me. So let's talk about Kaiju number 8.
Okie dokie.
Chapter number 13. So last time everyone was heading off on Kafka and Company's first mission, and we see that Hoshino, of course, has issued commands to everyone, and he's like, all right, get out there, blow the socks off your senior officers. We see Kafka first, and Kafka's thinking to himself, all right, I can tell this suit, I can tell that the suit will give me what I need now. I'm not like how I was at the exams. Combat power unleash! And one of the Yoju just tramples over him, boom, flings him up into the air. So everyone's like, oh my god, this guy's still only got the 1% combat potential unleashed from his suit, so it's barely helping him at all. One of the, I believe, more experienced cadets says, oh my god, we've got, babysit the rookies here. So he calls out to everyone, hey, we don't know the enemy's weak spots. So until we get intel from the front line, we need to be careful about this. But then as one of the Yoju is coming up, Kikoru just destroys it, blam, 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 tears it apart. And she's like, yeah, I understand. I'll very carefully hit every possible weak point, sir. So shows him. Kikoru gets congratulated by Kafka, who's buried under some rubble immediately. He says, hey, good job! And so she tries to, be kind of like, Ice Queen Cinderella, but I was like, of course, I'm so great. And then her suit says heart rate rapidly increasing because her heart goes doki doki. And I'm kind of like, don't you go down this direction.
Yeah,
okay?
I'm hoping it's just no, I don't really like being praised kind of thing, and not the like, oh, senpai noticed me kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it is, but I've been trained to to believe that every female-male partnership has a romantic undertone when it comes to shonen manga, and there are certain kinds of those that I don't like there being in. So we cut to a different zone where Furuhashi is, not Fumino, but the blonde guy who is one of the rookies, and he's like dashing around and stuff. Reno is interacting with him, and as they're talking, suddenly Furuhashi gets distracted when he looks at one of the corpses and is like, oh wait, this thing's down. And that's not Reno, sorry. Ichikawa is Reno's other name. Ichikawa took out the thing that he was dashing around. And so they're like, wait, did you just beat that thing by yourself? And Ichikawa was like, yeah, I swapped out the rounds in my gun for these freeze rounds, and I think that they suit me better. So, once I get the hang of them, I'm just gonna be really good at hunting kaiju. And he's just kind of like pushing forward, and it's nice to get a reminder that Ichikawa has kind of been Kafka's sidekick through much of the series, but he's actually the one between them who just has the more potential. He's, younger, and he's still in the same place as Kafka, and he didn't need any help to get in Kafka's position. So, but also he's thinking to himself as they're going through this, like, hey, I'm going to get so strong that you're not going to have to transform. So he wants to protect his friend.
Yeah.
We also get a few glimpses of some of the other rookies, and I'm going to have to learn these names eventually because they are part of Kafka's rookie group, Kaguragi and Izumo. There's one more experienced girl who immediately is like, those boys are handsome, mama want. That's basically what she says. Like,
pretty much.
And then we get over to Kafka, and like kill reports are coming in, and Kafka is observing everyone's progress because there are apparently it's like an FPS where you can check the scoreboard and see people's kills. And he realized, oh man, everyone's doing really well. He's like, I've got to do something. I can't just fall behind everyone. And then he thinks about what that one recruit was saying about not knowing the enemy's weaknesses. So it was like, I've got some weapons. I've got to use them. And so suddenly he goes corpse diving into one of the dead Yoju. And so he just starts pulling it apart, and he's like, oh, the suit makes it way easier for me to do this, as he's pulling into it, and he's analyzing its structure. And very soon afterward, he contacts Hoshina, and he's like, I found where the core of this is. It's at the base of the neck. There's this, there are these hard muscles that act as the spine, and the weaker officers might need to flank them. And also, they've got reproductive organs. So these things could spawn from their corpses, so watch out from that. And so Hoshina's like, oh, well, good job analyzing that. So they share the information out to everyone, and he congratulates Kafka on doing a good job. And this is something that I had kind of forgotten about. Kafka is like, oh right, his job was to take apart kaiju, so of course he has experience recognizing the organs of their corpses, and he utilized that information to be helpful, so that's cool. And so he, of course, thinks to himself, all right, I'm going to keep going from here. Eventually I'm going to make it to Mina's side. But then suddenly there is this gunshot that resounds across the sky. And he looks over his shoulder as Hoshina says, hey, take a good look. You see that over there? And Mina has a gun.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it.
It's basically like an old school mounted cannon with the long ass barrel, and she's just carrying it on, like you would a minigun, under style with both her hands. And she fires this cannon at the main kaiju and blows its goddamn head apart. As Hoshina says to Kafka, that's what the person you're aiming to stand beside is capable of. So, fun chapter.
This is a good chapter. I think the moment that stands out for me more than anything, honestly, it's not even Kafka, although he has a good chapter. This is a great chapter for Reno. It's only 2 pages long, but this is a character who I was kind of reaching a point where I was forgetting and really was starting to lack kind of any real identity to him, as Kafka took more of a stage, and then Kikoro kind of took over as the most important side character around them. But having him have this kind of ingenuity on top of this drive to want to be better, specifically to make it so his mentor will never have to reveal his power, as his way of kind of protecting him, is a really cool and clean character motivation. So I really do like where they're going with Reno.
Yeah. It's amazing how, this chapter it's only 21 pages long. Yeah. And so many characters get a moment. Kafka, Ichikawa, Mina, Kikoru, even the more minor characters in their group, they get little shows of promise like this. And it's like, geez, that's freaking economic storytelling right there, that all that gets accomplished. So
yeah. All right. Let's talk about Eden Zero, Nick. This is Eden Zero, chapter 114, Glue. Nick, it is the end of an era.
Is it?
Yes. I am no longer using Crunchyroll manga. It is done.
Gotcha.
It is done. It is gone. If you hadn't heard, Comixology has recently added Eden Zero to its Unlimited program. So basically, if you have the Unlimited program with Comixology, you can get all the chapters there. I believe it comes from the same translation. I'm not exactly sure who translates, because they don't credit anybody in the chapter itself. But I believe it's the same translation from Crunchyroll. Well, the Crunchyroll, I don't believe did either. So the
that is the thing that they don't do. So.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say. So I'm done with Crunchyroll. But if you're looking for a new place, like I am, because you can't stand Crunchyroll's reader, Comixology is the place. Not that I'm really trying to plug an Amazon company, but we have to work with what we got right now. So chapter 114, Glue. The big robots showed up because they're on this planet full of angry robots. And they basically fight a whole bunch of robots. There's not a whole lot of content at the start of this chapter. Every character gets like a moment to do something and kind of gets a cool line or something like that, but it's just another combat scene.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just, what you would expect each character to do given their demonstrated power set thus far.
Yeah. We cut over to
Weiss just pulls out a gun. He doesn't even do anything special.
Bang, bang, bang. I don't even remember her name, and I don't think it's gonna matter. The food reviewer girl is like, I fight too, and she just tries to bite one of the robot's head. So it's good to know that one joke will be kept going forward. We cut over to Sister and Clean. Sister is giving Clean sort of like a checkup, being like, okay, cool. And Clean is just like, you don't have to fix me if you don't want. They're like, yeah, but if you get better, then you can leave. She's like, but I kind of like everybody here, so I don't really want to leave. Sister's like, then don't. No one's making you leave. She's like, but my brother. And we get a flashback to a moment where Jin and, or no, Chris, I think is his name, right? Jin was his robot name, but Jin is actually his name. Something like that. I have to look it up at some point. I'm going to call him Chris, though, because Chris is cool, and so is Jin, right? So Chris is just like, hey, Clean has a disorder. If she shows any emotion, it causes a big mental breakdown. That's why she wears this device. She's like, okay, well, something must have caused that, right? And Chris doesn't say anything. So she's like, all right, well, if you won't tell me, then I'll just ask Clean. And Chris grabs her by the collar. He's like, the one thing you'll never do is ask her about the past. And I don't know why it kind of bothered me that, like, Sister gives him, like, obviously Chris is being very aggressive and then aggro in this moment. But I don't know why Sister immediately met. She's like, is that any way to talk to your physician? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like as a physician, your first thought should be like, oh, well, maybe I definitely should not do that then. But instead, we're just going to, everybody just has to be very macho in this scene. And Chris.
Yeah, it's just her way of being confrontational. Yeah. Like if it were a character like Witch, they would probably just like no-sell it. But she's the more aggressive, sadistic character, so she's got to match the intensity. But you could still do that in a way that makes her seem like she actually cares about Clean in the moment when she's defying him. There's a better way to do it. So.
Chris basically just walks away saying, if she ever remembers her past, then not even that device will be able to contain her feelings. So please, whatever you do, don't ask her. So it does seem like Sister is holding to that. There's an emergency. A bunch of robots are going to attack the ships. Laguna and Chris are going to help, as well as Clean. Moskoy does a stupid line. Hermit says he's annoying, tells him to go away. Very good. I'm glad we had this moment. Shiki and everybody.
I'm so glad that Moskoy is here.
Yep.
He's such an important, necessary character.
But
that makes every scene he's in better and elevated.
Now, he has new gimmicks. Because now he doesn't just say Moskoy. He will also do impressions.
Yes.
So there's that to look forward to. So not only is he a one-note character,
if we do impressions, so
it's not that he will only do one. He's like a one-note character. He'll do impressions of every other character's one-note jokes. So you got that to look forward to.
So what do we even need them for?
Yeah, really, it should just be a story about Moskoy. The crew on Forresto run into like a tiny little egg-shaped robot. And the robot's like...
It's the part that I've been looking forward to, Chris.
The robot's like, it falls down. It's very clumsy. It's a very tiny, pathetic robot. It just has like little chicken wings. It's like, we don't want to fight. The bots are not our enemy. And, they're like, no, there are good robots too. Many of us don't want to do anything, but we're all being killed by people from off-world. They said they would wipe out all machines on the planet, but that's not fair. And some of us robots are still good, and the ones who aren't, they're not choosing to. Chiki's like, yeah, this is all Grandpa's fault. So the little eggbot's like, help us, I don't want to die. Chiki's like, okay, you're going to be okay. And the little eggbot's like, thank you. And then it gets sniped. The most grandiose fucking way.
I laughed so much when this happened.
I don't know how you possibly not laugh at that moment because it's so fucking funny.
I don't want to die. Don't worry, we'll protect you. Thank you. Just blown the fuck away.
And Shiki's like, Eggbot! Except he doesn't say that because he doesn't know the robot's name because this fucking character didn't exist long enough to have a name.
I was just praising Kaiju number 8 for economy of storytelling in terms of like, oh wow, a lot accomplished in this chapter. You can go too far with it, as Eden Zero demonstrates on a regular basis. Don't need to go through everything so fast. Like, what if this little robot was in just the previous chapter?
Yeah.
Like, he was Coco's little friend or something like that.
Something along those lines. Something, we literally meet it for 2 pages, 3 pages, and then it's shot in the head and killed. And this is definitely meant to be a very heavy emotional crux for Shiki and the rest of the group. Because they're all like, oh my god, I can't, this bad guy did it. We're going to have to stop this bad guy. It's like sometimes I think Hero has like a clock in his house, and like if it ever reaches the end, if he hasn't finished like 59 gigantic stories, he'll die. And every so often someone comes in and pushes it a little bit forward. He's like, now I have to wrap up 6 chapters at once. But he really doesn't. But he's the one doing it. So yes, he's like, oh no, now I'm gonna have to put 6 storylines together into 1 chapter. Oh no.
But every time that he throws in an unnecessary ass or boob shot, the clock goes back down.
Yeah, that's how he keeps getting more time. There's like a fetish wall that changes, and it's like, tickling fetish is in, I have to put it in this week. He writes it on the day before. So one of the dudes from before comes in. I don't remember his name, and I, to be quite frank, do not care because this character seems to have the exact same personality as pretty much every other hero villain in existence. He's maniacal crazy dude.
Let's call him Dime Store Perospero, because that's who he reminds me of. So.
Absolutely. So Dime Store Perospero is like, that deserves a thank you, doesn't it? I killed that robot. And Shiki's, of course, like, you should be saying sorry. So the guy has his little cane gun, and he shoots a bunch of glue out of it, and it sticks Shiki to a tree, and then he just shoots everybody, and that's pretty much how the chapter ends.
Yeah.
And you're just like, all right, satisfying conclusion this week.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Chapter.
I'm glad, by the way, that the chapter is called Glue, exclusively because the main power's villain is glue, and there's no other like connective element in the rest of the chapter anywhere.
No. It was kind of like, up until that moment, it was like, oh, that's why it's called glue.
Yeah. And it's like, why is it called glue? Oh, because he fights with glue. Okay.
The stuff with Clean, I'm glad that they're actually establishing some stuff for these characters who are joining the crew. No, I don't know exactly how I feel about her and Gina's characters yet, but I'm glad that, and also I'm glad that she brought up the point of like, hey, when I get fixed, I don't want to leave. And Sister's like, well, I mean, that's fine, you can just stay here. But she's like, yeah, but my brother doesn't want to. So she's kind of like aware that the only reason they're there is because she has to get fixed, and like that's the only reason that Gina's not like, okay, we're leaving now. So it's nice that they actually are establishing that as a thing of like, oh, when she joins the crew full time, then it'll be like an actual like she decides to do it kind of thing. But other than that, all the stuff on the planet is stupid. Oh man, that robot getting blown up is so goddamn funny.
It's so funny. I really could not contain myself when it happened.
Just imagine, like, it's like if you're playing, like, a video game, essentially. It's, oh, man, please save me. Headshot.
And it's like the most cartoonishly adorable thing. Like, I'm just a little eggbot. I don't even know what purpose. I'm clumsy. Why would someone have built me? No one makes sense. But I'm so cute.
All right. Let's move on to Chainsaw Man. Chapter 88. Star Chainsaw! So, Denji's doing pretty goddamn well in this 8-on-1 fight that he's in. He's already killed Champo and the Katana Devil guy again. And now the Flamethrower Devil is stepping in, holds up his barrel, is like, burn for me, baby! And fires flame up through the ground, I believe, and just basically lights the entire building that Denji's in on fire. Denji jumps away and lands somewhere else. The Whip Devil comes in and tries to attack, and then there's just a series of explosions as Riz goes flying up through the building. She's grabbed onto Denji by his tongue scarf thing and is trailing him behind her. Not tongue scarf, intestine scarf. Tongue scarf is Greninja. So Denji responds by just cuts her apart, starts to fall. The Spear Devil throws his spear, which sticks right through Denji's shoulder and sticks into him. And then Makima, still seemingly on the same building she was in at the start of all this, points her hand up in the air and just goes bang with her hands. And an explosion or an impact knocks Denji up through the sky. And she keeps on doing it. She's just bang, 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 bang. And each time Denji gets knocked through the air until he is sent into the stratosphere. And she says as he is trailing away from the planet, how long can Chainsaw Man hold his breath? Chainsaw Man digs a chainsaw into his stomach, pulls out his heart, and Makima goes, he removed his heart. Denji proceeds to make a pitching stance and throw the heart back to the earth, which regenerates as it burns up. So he's fine again. Flies down through the sky, lances out with all 4 of his chainsaw arms to snare his enemies with his chains. So the Spear Devil, the Whip Devil, the Flamethrower Devil, and Makima all get wrapped up, and Makima's making a really weird expression on her face, somewhere between I'm so high right now and what is even happening. And they all get pulled up into the sky with Denji, who cuts all of them in half. And that's the end of the chapter.
That's it. I don't know what to think about Chainsaw Man. Like, the past, month, I feel like every chapter is like, Chainsaw Man's a thing. I don't know if it's good or bad, because I have zero clue where this is going. This really feels like someone was like, you couldn't just go really off the deep ends and jump. Fujimoto's like, you want to bet on it?
Like 2 chapters ago, Chainsaw Man was on a date with Kobeni, who was being forced to do DDR.
Yeah.
So, yeah, where is this going? I don't know, but it's a fun ride.
It's entertaining. It's entertaining. I have zero clue what's happening right now. But you know where I do have a clue about what's happening?
What's happening, Chris?
Magu-chan, God of Destruction.
Oh, yeah.
I don't actually, but I saw you were drinking water, so I had to fill that time in with something.
That's
I have
right.
no
We're
idea what's happening.
Podcast.
Yeah, I have no idea what's happening in this chapter. Oh, wait, no, now I remember this chapter. This chapter fucking sucks.
We'll get into it. Magu-chan God of Destruction, Chapter 15, The Blood-Soaked Pitch Dark Hound. We open with Magu in the wilderness as it's raining. Or I guess he's actually just in the yard near Ruru's house.
Uh-huh.
And he spots someone, and he goes, "Halt! State thy name." And then we cut back inside where Ruru is, and the door opens up as Magu returns, and he's like, "I have returned." And he's like, he comes through the door saying, "I was out hunting." And he has this little pupper carried on top of his head that looks very, very miserable as he pulls it in. And he says, "It was a fruitful hunt. He will be my minion." So Magu wants to make the doggo his new minion. Ruru says, "Put him back where you found him." Immediately. But Magu says, "He doesn't seem to possess a name, so I shall call him Blood-Soaked Pitch Dark Hound." Which Ruru, of course, objects to. She asks where the hell this puppy came from. And Magu says, well, he collapsed in the rain. Saruru says, oh, he must be a stray. I feel bad that he got left out in this rain. Well, I guess we better dry him off and get him warm. And Magu is like, yes, accept the grace of this god, and is toweling off the little pupper, who, of course, immediately takes a little bit of a liking to Magu. And Saruru's like, all right, well, he can stay here until the rain stops, but we're going to have to find, someone to adopt him. But Magu's like, no! Naputaku has his army of hermit crabs, and Uneris has the white-winged messenger pigeon. My colleagues each have their own loyal minions. I require my own minion for there to be balance! So Ruru is like, you're not ready for a pet, you're not responsible, kind of momming him. But Magu said, and she also points out, we can't keep a dog. I mean, like, having you around already is, kind of a drain. We don't have the money to own a pet. So Magu says, in that case, you may bestow offerings meant for me to him instead. And he's like, yeah, it'll slow down my regeneration, but so be it. And he starts to pull out some natto so that the blood-soaked pitch-black hound of darkness, or whatever the full title he bestowed on the dog is. And when Ruru sees this, she's like, all right, well, we can't just keep a dog, but the dog's whining up at her. And she's like, all right, fine, but, it's going to be really difficult. Can you take care of him? And Magu is like, I shall tame him. So, Magu is training the bloodstained pitch dark hound. And he's showing him around the place. And he's like, this box shall be your lavatory. Dispatch your excrement here. And all this. And, the dog actually appears to be listening, which shocks Ruru, and Magu explains, like, yeah, I'm sharing my thoughts with him. I'm transmitting orders directly to his brain, and he doesn't really, have very good answers for me, but I can understand yes and no responses. Now I shall teach him to bathe! So Ruru is like, that name you keep calling him, that's not very dog-like. Maybe you should give him something a bit more fitting. And Magu's like, very well, doggone it. Which is like the most dad joke that Magu has made in this entire series, and was kind of weird.
Yeah.
So Ruru's like, why don't you just, like, I don't know, call him Shadow or Poochie? And Magu's like, I will take the initials of his new name and shorten it to BS. Which, okay. So Magu takes BS and they take a bath together. He gets him to stamp his paw in the Minion book, and then they go to bed together, and then BS is cuddled up with Magu. The next day comes, the rain has stopped, and Magu is like, he needs a collar to demonstrate his servitude. So he just gets, like, the coiled up wrapper of a natto label, and it won't, like, go on BS's neck, but it's, like, tangling off of his ear like a silly crown. So they go out walking together, and they don't have a leash, so Magu coils one of his tentacles around BS's neck, and Ruru just holds onto Magu's other tentacle, so that's their leash. They get some dog food, they head to the park, and Magu and BS are playing together. Sorry, Magu is training BS in the ways of being a good minion, and he's like, you must strike a threatening pose, and BS is just kind of like, dancing around on his hind legs instead. He instructs Ruru to show BS the dance of destruction, which seems very similar to what BS was doing already, but whatever. Then all of a sudden something catches BS's attention. He starts yapping and whining, and suddenly he takes off after a car, with Magu still coiled around his neck and, of course, getting taken along for the ride. So Magu's like, you have some connection to that car. Then go after it, hunting dog. And they go racing after the car. Eventually, they catch up with it when the car stops at the nice house. And BS runs up and meets a bigger dog, his parent, most likely. And there's a family there that's been waiting for him. So Ruru speaks with the family, and all the family's happy that BS has been reunited with them. And so Ruru carries Magu off. And she's like, yeah, I guess it wasn't a stray dog. His collar measure just slipped off. So that's how, and that's, he got out of the house. And he couldn't stem his way back because of the rain. And then you found him when he was lost, Magu-chan. And Magu says, "Why are we leaving BS behind? He belongs to me. He should stay with me." And Ruru's like, "He can't because that's his home. We can't be selfish." But she's crying while holding Magu and taking him back home. We cut to a few days later, and Magu's eating the dog food that they bought for BS, and he's all depressed and sad.
We've all been there, right?
Yeah, eating dog food.
You're just depressed and you're just eating dog food like that.
So Ruru's like, "Magu-chan, cheer up. Look, I made a little plushie of BS so you won't miss him." And Magu takes it. He's just like, "It's just cloth. It's not the same thing." But then there's yapping at the door. And so they go outside and, "Oh, BS is coming. BS has come to visit. The family's brought him to see Magu and Ruru." And the mother says, "Oh, I wanted to thank you for finding him." And she says, actually, she specifically says, "Thank you for finding BS." And Ruru's like, "Oh, his name actually is BS?" And she's like, "Well, we hadn't named him yet. And he seems to enjoy being called the name that you gave him." And Magu observes BS, who starts doing the dance of destruction again. And he's licking Magu. And Ruru's like, "Hey, isn't this great? After they're gone, you trained him really well, and she said we could come by to see him anytime. Isn't that great?" And Magu said, "He said he'd not forget his training, even when in that house." And Ruru's like, "Oh, he actually had a more complicated thought." And Magu's like, "Yes, he could share his thoughts. Lonely creatures do grow so fast. I look forward to when we can meet again. I hope you grow up strong and mighty, my minion." That's the end. Magu made a little friend.
Nick, I'm going to give this chapter my lowest score ever. This is a negative 900 out of 10.
And why is that? Worst.
They should have kept the motherfucking dog. I don't care that. No, it's bullshit. They don't keep the dog. This is a perfectly good story. They should have kept the goddamn dog. All right? You just don't write that he's a stray dog from another family. He found a cool fucking stray dog and they're best friends. That's where the story should keep going, because they had the best fucking relationship and they shouldn't have had to give him away. And the story is going to be infinitely worse without BS in every fucking chapter. This is the dumbest move a manga could have made. Could you showed me how fucking awesome and how cool this series is going to be, and now it's not going to be like that anymore. That's a fucking negative 9,000 out of 10 chapter.
The part of the chapter where Magu's being carried away, and he's just like, "Why are we leaving him behind? He belongs to me." Oh my god!
I agree. He belongs to you, Magu. I'd be upset too. This is a very bad move.
So I don't like dogs, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't get sentimental for dogs. So it's a good thing that BS is a loyal minion of Magu and not a dog, because he's cute and precious as shit. And he's a good boy, and I love this chapter. So I'm sure that we'll see BS again.
It's not the same.
I know he's not going to be a dog everywhere, but I think that this was very precious, and I'm glad that it happened.
The moment for me is when she's just like, "I can't keep a dog with you already. It's too expensive." And his face is like, "Then you may give him my offerings instead." His eyes have like the veins and everything. He's like, "No, then you can do this and you can keep the dog that way.
Let me keep him." And I love, it's through this Magu filter. It's through the whole, he will be my minion, but he's just like, "I want my dog. I want my dog. Look at him. He does the dance of destruction. Let me have him." It's very cute.
All right, Nick. Let's finish off our dessert before we have to have our peas. With the last chapter, We Never Learn. Question 177, a pizza bet equals tomorrow night's Pixie Part 9. See, the dessert is the Asumi chapter, and the peas is going to be the gross, shitty Kirisu chapter route that follows this. So,
okay.
Yeah, we have to finish our dessert, and then we have to eat our vegetables. Yeah. So we start in a flashback of all the little various moments throughout Asumi and Yuiga's life through the eyes of Yuiga, seeing when he met her, when they first started to kind of know each other, and then eventually, the more intimate moments they share as he wakes up and Asumi's like, "Hey, your breakfast is ready." And she's doing the whole maid gimmick and everything like that. And then he comes out And he's just like, oh, hey, we're having breakfast. And we can see that there are photographs of the trip now that the two of them have taken to Doha-chan land. Which,
Yeah, they actually have pictures of them actually dating now.
yeah, which is a little confusing because the timeline for this chapter is kind of odd. But hey,
Yeah.
maybe it's just here to set us up for the time travel chapter or arc we're going to get next time.
This is like a month after the previous chapter, and it seems like they've done a lot in that month.
They also decide, because so basically they share kind of like a cute, almost like a married couple moment. It's a lot less of like a new boyfriend girlfriend moment than like we've been married for a couple, like a year or so moment where he's just like, oh honey, your tie's not straight. He's just like, I'll make breakfast for you next time, dear, that kind of thing. So they share a little kiss, and Yuigo rides his little scooter around town as Asumi's like, very happy just to ride in the back, and give him that hug around the chest the whole time. They say hi to everybody. The other PE girl, whatever her fucking name is, just like, oh, your injury's all better. I'd be so worried if anything happens to you. And Asumi's like, I'll fucking kill you. Don't you fucking do this. That's my man. Yeah. And then the townspeople, this is what confused me, because the townspeople are like, I'm glad you're better. Let's have a party to celebrate you not being dead. I was like, but they went to Doha-chan land. So, like, this is like a month later.
He rode a roller coaster.
Yeah, I was like, this is a month later. They were like, yeah, we should have that party, I guess, now. So they decide. They do have this big beach party. There's a bunch of little scenes of everybody kind of having fun. Asumi's parents are there, and they start kind of wistfully reminiscing about when their daughter first tried to become a doctor, and the difficulties of it, how he has some issues with Uega's father's death, and it always caused him self-doubt about a doctor and everything like that. He's like, you know what, it's just my small-minded ego, and I never thought that it would be my daughter who would actually teach me that lesson. We're talking about the whole big surgery she just had to do. So they kind of just say like, well, you know what, she's gonna be a great doctor. And then two old drunk guys are just like, what are we celebrating tonight? Oh yeah, you guys are having a baby. So they're like, no, are you crazy? We're not having a baby yet. But the dad hears this and immediately is just like, but you plan to in the future then, yes? Is it going to be a boy or a girl? You'll let me name it, right? So there's a little fun little moment there. Eventually the two of them separate. They go off and they're kind of looking over the ocean. Asumi's like fanning herself down. She's just like, man, he's so annoying, my dad. And Yuega's just like, but you know what? I kind of appreciate that he never changed. Never changes. Sumi's like, oh, Kohai. He's like, hey, you called me Kohai again. She's like, oh, yeah, I guess, sorry. I'm still not used to it. Nariyuki. And she's so, like, blushing and nervous as she says it. And Yuega just starts laughing because she's like, fuck it, you're teasing me, you asshole. They basically fall into a hug, and Sumi just kind of starts being grateful. She's like, I'm so glad you're alive. I was so worried. I was so scared. But even so, I'm so glad I chose medicine. So thank you for living. Thank you. And Yuiga just says, will you marry me? And he's like, yeah, I figure in the future we could run the clinic together. But most of all, I never want to be separated from you again. And she says, I felt that I want that too. But, I'm still planning to be a doctor and everything. So let's look forward to it, Dad. And that's how the chapter ends.
They are going through this relationship fast. They've been dating for like a month, and they're like, we need to get married and have babies.
There's some very cute things in there. There's definitely, I was confused at the dad comment because I thought that was her actually confirming she is pregnant. First I thought she was doing like the weird, like, yeah, I can't wait, daddy, like that kind of awful, creepy thing that people do. But then I thought she was like, oh no, that's a confirmation she's pregnant. I'm like, oh wait, no, I think that's just supposed to be playing off the fact that they were they had the whole thing about the misunderstanding.
Going to one day have a baby.
Yeah.
And so I think that they're basically confirming with each other, like, yeah, I want to do that too, because Asumi says like, I want that for us, and Yugi's like, oh, you may obey. Oh, and so,
Yeah.
they want to spend the rest of their lives together, and that's sweet. So, um, this is just kind of the wrap-up chapter.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right. This story in general has been very good, and I'm glad that it was the quality that it was, especially because, Asumi is such a fun character that we both really enjoy, so I'm glad that her story was really good. And yeah, after this is the Kirisu one, and then
Presumably it ends.
Of the series. Like, I mean, there might be something afterwards. You never know. They might do some thing that's just like, maybe they'll cut back before all that and just have a more ambiguous ending than just having a whole and then Kirisu and Yuiga were married, and that's where the series ends, which would be a little bit odd, I think, to have any one of them be like, and that's the conclusion we're going with. I feel like there will probably be like a little cap on everything after we get all 5 of these stories. But yeah, I guess we'll see how that one goes. We've kind of run the gambit between these stories of like the one that feels the most stereotypically romantic, the one that's just kind of lame, the one that's all right, and the one that's really good. Mm-hmm. And who knows what that fifth one.
Then we need the gross one, yeah. I do really enjoy this chapter. I think it's very sweet. There's a lot of little cute moments in it. I also do appreciate, and maybe this is a big part of the reason why it works. This is her route did not involve any of the other girls in any way, shape, or form. They aren't even really referenced at all. So maybe that's because, unlike the other girls, Asumi didn't have kind of the same relationship with the other girls as they did with each other. They weren't in the same class or anything like that. So maybe there just wasn't like an emotional connection there. But I definitely think that worked to the series' strengths on this little arc, because we never had to really like pull attention away to anyone else. This is just, hey, these two fall in love on this island, and it's very, very sweet.
All right. Let's move on to Dr. Stone.
Time to get stoned, Nick.
Z equals 169, Risk or Heart, which is a really strange title. So
no, Nick, it's asking, it's a question. Would you rather play Risk or would you rather play Hearts? Which is weird because they're very different games. So you're kind of asking a very wide spectrum. Like, do you want to play Tetris? Do you want to play Call of Duty? Like, I don't know. Those aren't really comparable, but I guess Call of Duty at this moment, I don't know.
So Senku has just spoken with the doctor among Zeno's forces, who has kind of come to an agreement with him regarding the protection of their prisoners and what's going to happen. But we get further exploration and confirmation on some things that we were expressing concern and confusion about last week in this chapter. Of, well, what the hell? Are they splitting the party? What's going to happen to all those people that we saw that are just going to get left behind in Corn Country here? And Suika brings that up explicitly, like, we're just going to say goodbye to them? And everyone's like, and Taiju specifically, is like, oh, Yuzuriha and everyone. So Senku says, look, we've got no time to lose here. We've got to get the Corn City going. And in order to do that, we need, people. And so we have a lot of shit to do because they've got to go to the moon. So everyone on the ship is, privy to this conversation, and so they're like, what, so we just have to finish doing the negotiations here? And Magma points out, we don't even speak the same language as these guys. So Yuzuriha asks openly, like, does anyone here speak English? And Minami's like, well, I'm a reporter, so I do know English, but who else? And Nikki's like, I mean, I know some English because I was big into Lillian, and so I wanted to understand the lyrics. And so Nami gets on the cell phone to communicate with the doctor, and is like, well, okay, our first main request is to guarantee everyone's safety here. And he's like, hey, look, we're in charge here in this situation. we've got the strength to back it up. So why should I listen to you? And Nikki just starts shouting over the microphone. Like, shut up and untie us! Untie everyone now! And he's like, well, listen, that comes later. You've got to tell us the secret. It's like, and just shouting through the microphone to the point that she somehow intimidates him even through that. So that seems to have gone well. And she says, listen, our friends are battling out there, so we're supposed to play nice and revive 1 million people for Corn City. Our interests align there. So if you're offering a hand to us, I will shake on it. A civil agreement's our only option here. So the doctor's like, you know what? I like you. You've got spirit. So we'll do this. We'll seal this friendly deal as provisional president. So we get this visual of them like at a peace conference in nice suits shaking hands, and it's kind of it's very silly, but I kind of like it. So they've come to an agreement on this, and so Yo and Yuzuriha and everyone else, they're untied, and it's like, all right, we're gonna exist in peace here. But the doctor points out, hey, we know you got Xeno, and we know you're fleeing, but we can't stop Stanley. So just so you know, and he's thinking to himself, like, I mean, they're going down the river, they're going to pass the boat, and they're going to pass Stanley. How are they going to make it past into the ocean? And we cut to Stanley on the boat as he's like, Senku, how are you alive? And he spots a plane. Not a plane. Sorry, I got confused about what's happening. So he spots something.
In the seamless transition that Dr. Stone has been doing for the past couple weeks, impossible.
This is very difficult to actually follow this sequence up until a certain point. So Stanley spots something on the bow of the ship that is approaching them as Senku is leading the boat past the Perseus. And so he grabs a machine gun from somebody and takes aim quickly and fires at it. And they're like, oh my god, there's a Medusa over there. And Homura is the one who specifically has spotted it. And so Yuzuriha immediately gets an idea, and she calls everyone over into a quick huddle, and they're all like, oh no, the Petra beam, run! So a bunch of people actually dive off of the ship because they're like, shit. But Stanley just very calmly fires at the device, knocks it off the prow, and it falls into the water harmlessly. And then the boat flies by at a maximum speed because he was distracted just aiming for that. And so they're past the Perseus and heading out to the ocean. And now Stanley, that he's had a very brief moment to think about, he's like, I get it. So that Gen asshole was just lying. There's a petrification device, but it doesn't work. It was just a bluff. All right. But now that's happened, they move past the Perseus, and all the people who were causing the distraction on the Perseus start waving to them, and they're like, they're going to make it. But Taiju, of course, spots Yuzuriha, and he's got this big grimace on his face. So Chrome says, hey guys, come on, we gotta go say goodbye. And No Fun Hyoga is like, hey, if you want to go out and say goodbye, you're gonna possibly get shot, so is that actually worth the risk? And Taiju sees Yuzuriha out in the distance calling out to him, and Chrome says, you bet. And so everyone raises their hands up in the sky as they shout out to each other, we'll see you later. And as everyone is raising up their fists in a way that no maritime goodbye has ever happened in manga, ever, Stanley realizes, as all the people who are being left behind in Corn City raise up their fists, they're blocking my line of sight. So he can't aim past them in order to get any more shots off. And Taiju says, we'll meet again. We'll definitely meet again. We're going to build cities all over the world. And Senku says, that's right. We're going to be playing Keep Away with Stanley and his people as we voyage around the globe. Our next destination is South America, where the first Petrobeam originated thousands of years ago. So what'd you think of this, Chris?
I wanted to like it more than I did. I still think this is a cool moment. Yes, I think it's kind of rough in a vacuum to be like, we're going to have this big scene where we show that we're separated, but we're united, especially on boats. So what can we possibly say? Because we can't speak across this distance. What gesture will we possibly do? Look, it's just the fact of the matter that One Piece has done one of the most iconic moments of like recent manga history in there, and anything else that seems remotely like it is going to be compared to it. It's odd. It still works. The issue I have is the biggest part of it, because there's a big thing of like who's going where, and to be frank, most of the important characters are still with Senku. There isn't actually that many big characters being left behind. It's like Kinro and Ginro if you care about them, and then Yuzuriya. I was trying to think if there's anyone else even close to them, and it's not really. It's a bunch of side characters for the most part. So the big thing there should be Yuzuriya and Taiju, because those are two characters who have a defined relationship going in different directions, and it legitimately definitely feels like we should have more of a moment shared between them there.
Chrome and Ruri separated, of course, when the Perseus first set off.
Did they?
And, yeah.
Okay, I thought Chrome was going with them.
No. When the
okay,
first set
gotcha.
off,
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Chrome and Ruri got that kind of focus
yes.
because that was like really the only person of real significance that was not going on the journey with them. It was like her and Kohaku's dad were like the only characters who had like a considerable number of lines that were being left behind, and neither of them you really thought would come along. Ruri maybe, but not really. Oh, and Tsukasa's sister, of course, got left behind. But all that was like there were so few characters that were being left that it's like, okay, there's enough to just note that this is significant that they are being left behind, but it's for an understandable reason. But because the crew kind of got like expanded and then now split up this way, it really feels like, okay, either there's going to be, a couple important things and then everyone else, or it should just be like everyone gets that moment. And it feels like Yuzuri and Dayu don't really get that, even though she's the most prominent character that's being left behind, and especially in this display. So.
There's definitely a moment. There definitely is a look of Taiju looking back, but they don't. And there's the line of them saying, like, is saying goodbye worth the risk? As you see, Taiju has to look off and say goodbye to Yuzuriya. And you hear Chrome saying, you bet, because they're all in it together. They're all sharing their own kind of emotions here and recognize that it's worth this risk for them to be able to at least say goodbye. There is a powerful sentiment there, but you kind of want more attention paid to it, like in terms of size and panel layout and everything else. Dr. Stone has kind of had this issue of just feeling very complicated and hard to follow, like in the past month or so. And I feel like the pieces are there to be really good, but there's a lot more time and panel space devoted to like big 2-page spreads or 1.5-page spreads rather of boats passing each other and things like that. And I'm like, the
map of South America.
Yeah. I was like, the heart of this chapter should ultimately be Yuzuriya and Taiju, and you base everything else around it. Also, I agree with people. I'm happy Nikki has a moment, but her at the start of the chapter just like shouting out is like kind of random and out of nowhere. It was kind of like, oh, we need a moment for Nikki too. Because I'll be honest, she's one of the people I considered like a side character. She's one of the ones staying behind. And it's like, look, I mean, yeah, I get it. Your character really doesn't have a defined purpose and everything else. So it was kind of cool for her to have a moment, but you're definitely like, oh yeah, you're still around.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm a little bit more positive on it, but I definitely understand your problems with it because
I still like it.
We've seen like this side of Nikki before, but only very occasionally because she's not a constant enough presence that side of her character is very well established, kind of thing. It's one of those things where it's like you establish character traits by having them be around more often and do stuff frequently. So
can you check something? Can you tap your headset mic real quick? Yeah, you're on your headset mic. That's why. It sounded.
I wonder how long it's been like that.
It's been the entire episode. I thought it was a little bit off.
You only just pointed out to me. Come on, man.
Well, because your mic was closer to your mouth than usual, I believe.
I don't really think so. Okay, I'll get it fixed.
All right.
But it's
Now
your
we
chapter
know.
next anyway. So.
Yeah, there we go. All right, guys, let's talk about Mashle, Magic and Muscles. If I had it, I would throw on the Bane mask here. But don't you mean Mashle, Fred, Batman's butler, and Magic and Missiles? But I thought I'd end on another one. and leave them wanting more. So this is chapter 34, Mash Burn Dead and the Survival of the Fittest. So last time, Abel got socked in the face with a knee. So he says, Marioness change! And we get a big, cool color spread, 2-page color spread for Mashle that is pretty cool looking. I really dig it. Mashle has been doing stupidly well recently as well, so it's a good thing.
I can't believe I spent the entire episode.
Yeah, now it sounds. I was like, I don't know, maybe Nick's internet's just kind of off today. What are you gonna do?
It has been kind of off because you sound weird to me. So
how weird?
I think it's just. I think that might have actually been distracting us from that. But anyway,
there we go. So there's this big moment, like, what's happening? And then Mash's body starts turning into a marionette piece by piece, and they're like, I didn't think I would need this spell, but this doesn't mean natural selection isn't still at play, because the weak are but prey, and Mash has become a marionette. And he's like, when I look at you, I see an unusually clever rabbit. And he grabs Mash's coin, and he's just like, you were a good sport for a rabbit, but rabbits are rabbits, and they will never be wolves. And then he looks, and he's like, no, that's not a coin. It's a cream puff in my hand. What? And he has a moment. He's like, what is this? And you just see the moment. You see the movement of an uppercut that just connects with him in the jaw. And Mash grabs the cream puff. He's like, my cream puff. I could have sworn I hid that in my robe. That's a little joke where Love's just like, ew, you keep it in your robe. But Abel's like, how did he do that? My puppetry blocks all signals from the brain. It wrests control of the body. He should have been able to move unless a spinal reflex. And basically, to sum it up, basically they say that Mash saw, like, unconsciously in his puppet form, Abel grabbing his cream puff as a threat, and just, like, natural instinct took over and he uppercutted him. It's so stupid, but very funny. And he's just like, well, whatever. I guess the survival of the fittest demands that the weak fight to protect themselves as well. You put up a worthy struggle, but now I shall crush you with the ultimate spell. Marioness secondeth harm, puppet. And we get this giant spread of this crazy marionette with 3 heads and all these arms. And it's being controlled by like a string monster in the background. And he says, this will turn everything in a 100-meter radius into my puppet. The moment the strings begin to touch you, they will descend upon you, robbing you of control, and there is no way to counter them. And you see, like, half of Mash's body is starting to turn into it. And again, I assume it's part of the joke, because he basically does the same speech again. He's like, you have my respect. For a rabbit, you were a worthy challenger, but I had too much pride, and I thank you for showing. And then his fucking big spell just gets punched and obliterated, and Mash is just holding up one of the hands. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, were you about to thank me? And Abel's just like, how are you not a puppet? He's like, I cut the strings.
I do like that line, because he's just like, how are you not a puppet?
Why aren't you a puppet? And basically, he's like, no, that's not possible. And Love explains it, where she's like, right after he used the magic, Mash turned his body in a very specific way so that part of his body would be contacted by the strings at a different time. And then right before he lost control of his side, he snapped the strings, controlling him there, and then basically, like, snapped the rest afterwards. So everyone's just like, what the fuck? What's happening? And Mash takes a moment to be like, oh, you're sweating, little rabbit. And then he sends his big puppet against him again. And Mash just punches it into oblivion, gets behind him. And he does his whole, like, erector spine, magic, hell fall. But let's be real. He fucking grabs him. He flips Label upside down, who has the best expression as he's being flipped upside down. I'm like, what's happening? And he jumps in the air, and he just gives him the most vicious pile driver, as Abel's like, maybe I was the rabbit.
So I like the pile driver. I like a couple of the jokes. Love is actually really growing on me just as a peanut gallery character, because she's just so like, this is like kind of crazy, you know.
Yeah.
But this chapter is like, it's kind of just feels like a weaker version of the previous one, honestly.
Yes.
And I think that the big reason why Mashle's fights tend to be short is that they kind of just have that structure of, for each chapter, of it looks like the guy's going to beat up Mash, and then Mash kicks their ass instead. And that's satisfying when it happens, and then it's like, okay, that's over with, we'll move on past that. But then it's like, all right, every time that this guy throws something at Mash, he just immediately shrugs it off. And then the longer each fight goes on, the less effective it feels. So this was, I think, going a little bit longer, a little bit too long in this battle for me, especially because, like, it felt like such a perfect thing to do, to have him try and take control of Mash, and Mash just uses sheer force of will to break through it, and he breaks the guy's fingers through the force of it, and then he knees him in the face. Like, that feels like it should have just been the end for me. It's not bad. It's just like, I'm saying, like, I didn't like it as much as the last one. So.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think last chapter kind of did everything this one did, just a little bit better. The pile driver's awesome. I do like some of the moments. There is a hilarity to the moment of like, what is this? As he's holding the cream puff, as you just see Mash's fist starting to come up at the bottom of the panel. And I do get the idea. It's kind of like, we're establishing this world. Everyone has these crazy powers. Second spells are really important, so we had to show off this guy's. But at the same time, like, if it was part of the joke, it should have been hammered in more that he just keeps giving the same speech over and over again every time. He's like, now I've won.
Yes.
Yes, you are the rabbit, and this is the, like, that should have been part of the gag. But it is definitely,
even if Love had just said before, you know, he said it this time, just like, oh, here he goes again, just like a quick little insert, and then he goes on. You know, it would have made a little bit of a difference. So, all right. Ayakashi Triangle, Chapter 16, her first. So last time Matsuri went to go and visit Kurogi, Reo Kurogi, who is Matsuri's Q, his gimmick inventor person. And so we find out that as Matsuri is getting ready to take on this, like, literal barrel-shaped robot thing for a bit of a training session, that in addition to fixing up his ninja gear, she decided, you know what, while you're here, we'll actually, you know, see how, like, you know, your vitals have changed, and so, you know, I'll be observing you from here while you go and take this thing on. So it's like, all right, fair enough. You know, his body has completely changed. So she's making observations of like, oh, he's more graceful now, but his reach and strength went a bit down, but he's covering up for them well and stuff. And so Suzu is sitting there next to her in her, like, control room as they're watching Matsuri fight this thing. And so she explains, like, yeah, so since I'm in charge of I'm his artist, and I need to know more than anyone about Matsuri's body. And so, of course, immediately Suzu's like, wait, is that what's really going on here? So maybe while Matsuri and I kind of lost touch. And so she literally imagines Reo and Matsuri just having sex while she's like, I need to inspect every inch of you. Like, that's basically what she imagines. So her mind immediately goes there. So she says, how long have you known Matsuri? And Reo answers, well, it's been about 312 days, 10 hours, 10 minutes, and 3 seconds since I met him. Because she's got that whole, you know, she is a super nerd character. But she says that today I'll never forget. And we get a flashback to when Reo was kind of being introduced by her father, clan member? I don't know. Some very bushy, bearded guy. He looks like Eggman if Eggman had a beard. Getting introduced to Matsuri's grandfather, and he says, like, yeah, she's, you know, the most talented member of our clan, but if she's just gonna keep doing whatever happens to come to mind, then she's just gonna be an apprentice for a long while. But while they're talking, Matsuri is using these wind-controlled shuriken that Reo has whipped up. And he's like, oh, aren't these so cool? Look, oh yeah, I'll call them my Demon Wind Shuriken. And he's already mastered them perfectly, and then he snaps them back to his hands. And he says, you know, I've decided, Reo Kurogi, when I take my proficiency test and I become an Exorcist Ninja, I want you to make my gear. And so Reo thinks to herself, you know, this was the first time that someone recognized me as an artisan. And she explains to Suzu in the present, normally it's constructed by the master, my father. He's the expert, all this gear. And then Exorcist Ninja put their lives on the line fighting Ayakashi, but Matsuri instead entrusted me with that. And that's why it's my responsibility to support him with everything that I have. And then she gets distracted by, you know, the test that's going on up until it's time to take a break. And she's like, all right, you know, I'll verify the data here. But suddenly the robot comes to life again and it grabs onto Matsuri and it fan services him.
It really does. One of them has gone down her pants. And I was like,
yep,
come on.
So it's so Reo's like, why has the ultimate tickle device been activated? And Suzu rightfully is like, why does it have that function? But it turns out that there's an Ayakashi inside the maintenance access of the wood robot sparring partner thing. And it's Shirogane! He's inside it and is taking control of it. And we get a very, very short explanation from him to himself of just like, I've got this feeling that I can't dilly-dally any longer. So just a quick little throwaway that we get more explanation on later of, this is why I'm acting now when I've just kind of been house-catting this whole time. So he's going for the scroll right now. Suzu tries to go and race out, but Reo says, hey, no need to, Miss Suzu. And she says, hey, Matsuri, don't hold back. You can break it. And Matsuri's like, well, are you sure? You spent a lot of time breaking this. And Reo's like, hey, equipment's meant to be broken. And I love the process of improving things when I rebuild them. So Matsuri's like, all right, you got it. And calls on his weapons, immediately just breaks the robot apart. Shirogane goes flying out, and we see later he's held in Suzu's arms, and he's kind of sooty. And so he's talking a little bit with Reo afterwards, and Suzu has observed them as they talk, and she's thinking to herself, you know, I mean, this is a part of Matsuri's world that I didn't know about, and if Shirogane hadn't appeared, I would never have known about it. So for all this time, Ms. Kurogi's been supporting Matsuri, so I need to work hard to support him too. Then we get more fan service.
Yep.
It's a thing that happens in this series. So it happens. Very skimpy ninja gear that Reo was very proud of for some reason. I don't know. Afterwards, everyone goes home. Matsuri's thinking to himself about what happened, what a conversation that he had with Reo, because she's like, "Hey, what kind of Ayakashi got you?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And she says, well, the way your gear was broken wasn't normal. The jutsu that makes the gear convert into particles that then changes into clothes went buggy. I can only think some kind of Ayakashi power went through it. And so Matsuri has realized that the reason that his gear malfunctioned was because of the time that Suzu tried to put her energy into him. So Matsuri's like, so that means that her powers are actually close to those of an Ayakashi, which, given the fact that we kind of knew about the two types of energy before, that should be kind of obvious, but he's worried about this. And he's also thinking, I don't think that Suzu can actually undo the jutsu of the King of Ayakashi, but what if she can? She would truly become the Ayakashi god. And if she does become like that, I feel like she'd be really far from me, somewhere far beyond my reach. And we see that Suzu is in her home, and she's making a lot of progress on her Ayakashi medium training already. She's got a bunch of paper cranes floating around her with her power.
Uh-huh.
And then right before we close, we see that Shirogane, the reason why he suddenly acted out like this is because he's realized that with all these ikon that have been appearing recently, it must be related to him. Is he here in this town? And we see a shadowy figure approaching. So there's some dumb fan service in this chapter.
Yes.
But I actually kind of like it otherwise. So
No, I think this was actually a pretty decent chapter, all things considered. Like, we get the tease of somebody, like, it'll always kill me. It must be related to him. Fucking stupid. But I do think that there's a nice little moment of showing that Matsuri back then, he was pretty nice to Rio, and not like in a very earnest way. He was like, wow, her shurikens are actually really good. I know how to use it. It's a little nice moment. And I like that. That's like, hey, you could easily get out of this situation. Why aren't you? She's like, oh, but I don't want to break something that you've made. So it's, a sweet little moment that shows he cares about somebody else in a very earnest way. There's a lot of really dumb fan service, but that's the series. I have come to expect it with every week. So it's
once you kind of accept that, then you're just like, I'll just look at the other things.
Yeah, I just need to stop reading it while people are around. Where did all that young lady's clothes go? Just get out of here, Dad. Go home.
I ended up actually quite liking Rayo after this little two-parter that we got in the last couple of chapters. I named a few like inventor girls that she reminds me of, but the one that actually she reminds me of the most after having gotten this chapter is Entrapta from the newer version of She-Ra. She's very scatterbrained and is obsessed with her inventions and stuff like that, and also her hair is kind of reminiscent of her too. But yeah, I do like the bond between them, and I like how Suzu starts off with this whole, it's like, oh, has this girl fucked him? Has she fucked him? And why haven't I? But by the end of it, she's like, oh, there is this whole side of Matsuri that I didn't know about, and I want to be there for him. And that's really nice.
Yes.
So.
I do like that. All right, let's wrap things up this week with Black Clover, page 267. The devil binding ritual. So last time, Asta's had been taken by Nature Boy Ric Flair into this hidden underground chamber.
About that every week.
Yeah, it's it's gonna be what it is. And he has to basically fight against his devil given human form, which means losing his arm. So the devil's there, and the devil kind of looks a lot like Asta, just with horns. Very, young-looking kid. And specifically, the arm that he did take is more muscular than the other arm he has. So I presume he actually gets some benefit of all of Asta's exercising when he has that arm.
Yeah,
so
it's like the rest of his body, except for his head, is more in shadows. So it's like it has more defined form.
So Asta is being like, oh, that's what you look like. Oh, I've been wanting to tell you something for ages. Thank you. And everyone's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, oh, because you've saved me all those times over and over again. And I really want to thank you. And I don't know if maybe this is just like an abusive relationship that I've been in too long, but I was kind of endeared. I was like, it would have been a different thing if Ichigo, every time he met his hollow, was just like, thanks, buddy. You really kind of helped me out a whole lot. And it's very stupid and charming, I guess, in the way Asta is.
Chris, don't you mean every time that Ichigo met Zangetsu, because that was Zangetsu instead of the old man Zangetsu that was his Quincy pet? I fucking hate that twist.
So basically, his devil's just like, whatever. You're an idiot. Why are you saying this to the guy who took your arms? And he's just like, well, it was the deal. Fair is fair. Devil's like, God, you're an idiot. I'm going to kill you now. And it's like, I can't let you do that. And actually, I just remember this is the first time we talked, and you're actually kind of short. It just starts making fun of him. He's just like, I didn't know you, like, I remember before you were kind of big when we talked, and I don't want to get my butt kicked by somebody who's this short.
I do. Well, I think he more has the problem of, like, every time they had the internal conversations, he was huge and imposing. And he's like, why were you faking like that? I don't get my ass kicked by someone who has to do that.
Yeah. So he's just like, you really don't get your situation. And he takes Asta's book just by like mind, Jedi pulls it over, pulls out the demon slaying sword, and he's just like, there is no way you can win this. And he swings his sword down. Asta barely, he comes right down by his side, slaps him around, just beating him up, and the devil is just laughing. You walked in my turf. It's not going to be your arm. This time I'm taking the rest of you. And Asta's like, wait, we could talk about this. And Nature Boy Ric Flair is just like, fight. You came here to get stronger, right? Then defeat him, no matter what it takes. If you lose, the devil will take over your body and you will die. And all the bones of everyone in this place are people who have failed at this. So you are not special. You will be one of many. And we see that there's actually like murals of this. So this is actually a relatively frequent thing apparently within this world.
There's a lot of skulls in the pillars.
Yes.
So this has happened a lot.
There are a lot of them. So Estes is like, wait, is this something we're not supposed to be doing? Nature Boy Ric Flair does not answer. Just like, did you, that's it. You have 2 days. Did you think you could get stronger in that time by decent methods? This is a world.
Well, I thought I would just like stab a doll that would make the spirit of my Zanbakuto appeared. And then if I lost, the only consequence would be that I wouldn't be able to have Bankai. So...
I really do like this line where he just says, this is a world you entered because you had no magic and wanted strength. So the monster or devil keeps attacking, and Nature Boy Flair is like, what are you doing? He's just going to kill you if this keeps up. And Ass is like, no, he's not trying to kill me. I can tell from his ki. And Nature Boy Flair is like, what are you talking about? Your opponent is like, he has like the quiet, like, and he's like, what are you talking about? This is the devil. There's no such thing as a devil with principles. And of course the devil's like, yes, I'm very evil. Super evil. Very, very evil. And that's like, no, he's not. I can tell. He's kind of like a wuss.
It's kind of like that bit in like, like, oh yeah, I've had sex with so many women. When you get them and you're just there and you're having sex with them.
So I'm super evil. I remember one time I saw a cat and I didn't even pet it because I'm an animal, bitch. What are you gonna do?
And I only fed him 1 bag of cat food.
Yeah.
It really wanted more, but I cut him off after 1.
I only petted him a little bit. I didn't even give him belly kisses after the first couple. So how about that? I'm a real bad motherfucker. Mother farter. Sorry, I don't want to swear.
I'm sorry. I know that's. Are there children present? I don't want to. I mean, I don't care if there are kids around here. I'll only give them a few lollipops before I send them on their way.
I don't think you understand what a bad dude I am. One time I saw a movie and I walked over and I saw another movie in the same theater after that without buying a ticket. But the movie was that good that I came back out and I bought a ticket anyway because I wanted to support the filmmakers. But I didn't feel bad about it at all. I did buy a couple boxes of Raisinets to support the theater, though, because that's where they make most of their money. Why aren't you feeling like I'm a really scary dude? I feel like you don't believe it. Asta does the whole fucking Zangief, Wreck-It Ralph. Like, just because you're devil doesn't mean you are evil. See how I worked it all together there? Yes. And the devil starts having an image, starts seeing the silhouette next to Asta that looks very similar. And he says, damn it.
Asta guy would look a lot better if he were a chick.
He's like, oh, I wish I didn't have that condition that makes me see Rule 69 in front of every character I see. Oh. Yeah, he has a flashback, and we see some female character saying, you aren't a bad guy, pointing at him in much the similar way. I've heard a lot of theories. One is saying that very well could be Asta's mom. Maybe, who knows? I'll be honest. I thought this was a boring chapter reading it, but then recapping it, I was like, this is a way better chapter than I gave it credit for. A lot of the pieces actually do work. Rule 63, sorry, is the one I was thinking of.
I don't really care for Asta's like, no, we could be friends thing, because I know that it only has come up as a surprise this way because Nacht forced him to rush into it, so he didn't. Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Okay.
So he didn't know what was going to happen, and so we specifically because of that didn't know what his thoughts on this was going to be like. But every time we've seen Asta interact with his devil, it's definitely been one where, like, yes, he hasn't been ashamed to reach out for help when he needs it. But then, you have to remember that this guy, took his arm. And it seems like he should be a little upset about that. But instead, he's just kind of like, yeah, thanks for letting me fight with you this whole time. Let's be friends now. And it's like, that's a very cheeky thing to do. And Asuka, you're not cheeky. I feel like you're more about, guts and determination than you are about everyone can be my friend, even though he's made a lot of friends along the way. It's by not being this way that, he's connected with so many people. It's by being upbeat and positive and determined, but it's not been about like, and we can be friends, right? So it seems a little weird. If this is Asta's mother, I hope that the devil is like, yeah, I was in love with your mom. It was a whole thing. We dated for a while. Saw her tits a few times. She's really hot. And every time I look in your eyes, I just get these weird feelings.
Do you do the same thing where your toes curl whenever you stick something up your rectum? Do you? Because she had that. Do you have the same thing?
I don't even know who my mom is. Shut up.
Just him screaming, I don't like this conversation. He tries to cover his hands with his ears. So he's like, oh, you took my arm. That's the only time he cares.
It's very important that you learn about what a freak your mom was, okay?
Yeah. Not even that freaky. It's like a little ass play. And he's like, yeah, your mom was a real sick fuck.
Sometimes she would just like not wear underwear around the house. Like that's so freaky, right?
One time, your mom was like, what if we did it with the lights off? Like a dirty cow she is. Like, I don't think you know a lot about anything, Mr. Devil. You don't.
I had to feel around to find her. It was so sexy. One time we didn't do it through the sheet. It was so hot.
One time we pretended to be different people. Yeah, you like that?
It was like, yeah, call me a human.
It's just like, you don't seem to know a lot about sex or being evil.
Shut up, you're like 15, kid. There's like 3 girls in love with you. What the fuck do you have to say about that to me?
Yeah, but girls aren't push-ups, so I'm not interested in them.
One time Noelle was like, do you want to do some workout on me? And I was like, no thanks, I'm happy with this tree branch.
And then I lifted it all night. I slept like a baby that night. What were we talking about? Yeah, I bet I could beat the Spade Kingdom if I lift that tree again. As he just leaves.
Nature Boy Ric Flair over in the corner just... Like, why did I bring him here? I hate this.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, the chapter was kind of okay, but it was a little bit weird. I am actually interested in this, not just because, like, oh, who is this girl, but like, hey, we'll learn more about this devil that is dwelling inside of Asta. And that's, something that's been alluded to for a really long time. And hey, devils are a big thing in this story arc, so it'll be kind of cool to learn about that. And it'll, establish more of their relationship. So
yeah, I don't know. As I said, maybe it's just Stockholm Syndrome, but I feel like I'm kind of starting to get into Black Clover's lore a little bit more.
Mm.
All right.
Okay, that is going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap. Let's name our favorites for this week. Favorite chapter and MVP.
Favorite chapter I'm going to give to We Never Learn. I really like that chapter. I liked it as a closing to that whole little arc. And you know what? I want to say it. Chapter of the week to We Never Learn, because I feel like I'm not going to be ever saying it again.
I'm going to give my chapter of the week to Magu-chan God of Destruction, because it was sweet and adorable and took me really off guard, and I loved it. So,
all right. My character of the week. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to ask you for that. So.
Okay. My character of the week is going to be Nero or Reno. Sorry, Reno from Kaiju number 8. Yeah. I just have to remember he's named after that stupid character from Final Fantasy VII.
Is he?
Well, he is not named after him. He has the same name as a stupid character in Final Fantasy VII.
I'm a little bit torn on this. But I think I'm gonna give it to Rayo. like I said, she actually left a really good impression on me after this chapter, after we got to know her more and see more of her relationship with Matsuri. And I think I actually really like the dynamic between them, and it's very sweet. And also, this way we get the Reno Rayo thing.
Yeah.
So it rhymes. It's like
Yep,
poetry.
Rio and Reno. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah, it rhymes.
All right.
Behind the scenes. It's so weird.
The audience picked We Never Learn as their chapter of the week, and Kafka from Kaiju number 8 as their character of the week. So totally got that.
Yeah, Kafka got to prove himself this week, so it was cool. Yeah. All right, Chris, do we have another Halloween series that we're going to be taking a look at?
Yes, I have another one here. The series we're going to be picking up, this one was recommended by Gilly Elfson. This is Mirako-chan, which is a comedy horror where a girl is able to see grotesque monsters around her, but no one else can, and she decides to just ignore them. So I guess it's going to be a comedy series about horrifying monsters that only this one poor girl could see. So that sounds like a little bit more amusing of a series.
Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. Join us. Well, it looks like it's only about 30 chapters, so probably next week.
Yeah, I was just say I don't think it'll be crazy long.
And yeah, in the meantime, thank you everyone for joining us for Weekly Manga Recap. We do the show on twitch.tv/Royalty, live recording around 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time each Wednesday. You can also follow us on Twitter to stay updated on exactly when we're going to be starting the show. @WMR Podcast is the official podcast account, and your hosts are @Royalty and @NickFTime. You can also check out our past episodes on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com and wherever we get the podcast to go up on a feed somewhere. If you are interested in getting more involved in the community and making suggestions for future manga for us to read, or if you want to know every series we've done, every end of episode poll that we've shared the results of, all that stuff is available on the Google Doc that is maintained by Ninja X3i. You can find that via the Discord server, the Weekly Manga Recap Discord server. And we want to thank everyone who supports us on Patreon. We just recorded a special bonus episode recently that you should be, I believe, is that already out?
It's already out. If you want to check it out, we have a new bonus podcast out. It's a top 10 where Nick and I count down our top 10 favorite, or best rather, anime openings. So you can go check that out. It's gotten a lot of really good comments. A lot of people finding some nostalgia or some new favorites from that.
And if you're interested in supporting us on that, you allow us to create more bonus content for you guys to enjoy, and we appreciate every single supporter we get on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we want to extend our special thanks, not just to Ninja X3i for maintaining the Google Doc, but also to Steve Mann, our tire cut artist, to Infamous Planet for making the visual frameworks for the streams of the show, and to Lindsay Del Cheddar and Milo Jack Stilitz for making the opening sequence of Weekly Manga Recap.
Also, I want to throw out there as well, I know that there's been a recent thing, so for people who are still listening, if you aren't a part of the Discord, I know that there has been a weekly thing now where on Saturdays, the group on the Discord is getting together to do games of Among Us, and I think that's a really cool thing. I wouldn't be shocked to see if maybe it evolves into doing more like regular game nights with people, so definitely check that out if you're interested.
Yeah. And I think that is it. I think we're clear. So, Chris, I'll be sure to thank Bane for showing up for the
I will.
episode.
Yeah, he definitely said he had to go. He left on a high note, and then he had to get going. I assume to go get shot by torpedoes from Catwoman's motorcycle, or however he died in that last movie. It was pretty dumb. That's all I remember.
What could have been?
You mean what could have been? Nick, why are you taking your headset off? Nick, why are you standing up and leaving? Nick, why is your car starting? Nick, why do I hear a plane taking off?